Hi, it's Barbara, and welcome back to another episode of Can I Recreate It in Elementor? In this series, I take a look at websites with interesting design elements and see if I can recreate those elements using the Elementor page builder. The website that we're going to look at today is for the Brooklyn Tower. The Brooklyn Tower is an apartment building in Brooklyn with really high-end, fancy-looking apartments. They did a really great job with their website, in my opinion. I love the professional images and the minimal layout. I think they did a really good job of showcasing what the apartments look like, as well as all of the amenities that are included when you live here. Now, unfortunately, starting prices for a studio apartment here are $875,000, so it's a bit out of my price range, but it definitely looks like a nice place to live. On their homepage, I thought that this section was really well done. I love the minimal layout, and I love how when you roll over the section, an image shows up in the background and then the text changes color. I thought that was really cool and something that I don't really see that often, so I wanted to recreate it in Elementor. Okay, so when I first looked at this, I thought that this would be pretty easy to achieve, but this is a classic case of sometimes the simplest things are often the hardest to recreate. This one definitely got me. I spent a lot more time than I originally thought I would trying to figure out how to get this to work correctly. If I take a look at the code, it isn't super crazy to create this section, but there is quite a bit going on behind the scenes. So just looking at this, we have two sections side by side, 50% width and full height. If I wanted to do this the easy way, I could achieve this look by just creating 4 images. 2 images for the off state and 2 images for the hover state. And we could link those images and kind of be done. But this right here is text, not images. So I want to do it the way that they did it, or try to get it as close to what they have as possible using Elementor. This text has a stroke around it, which I thought was a pretty interesting design choice. I really liked how that looked. And I know I can achieve that using Elementor because the text stroke is one of the styling elements in some of the widgets. But on hover, I think we're going to run into some problems. So CSS, although I try not to use it, is kind of unavoidable in this case. I think we're going to have to use some custom CSS to achieve this effect. Another thing that's a bit tricky is that this entire container is clickable, not just the text inside of it. I can click anywhere in this box and it will take me to the page that I want to go to. When I first started trying to work out how to do this, I ran into issues with this in particular because I could easily get the headings to link, I could easily get a span to link or any text widget, but I couldn't figure out the best way to get the entire section to be clickable. But then I remembered that Elementor has this handy feature. I can actually make the entire container clickable by changing the HTML tag of this container. So I'm going to get into how I did that later on in the tutorial, but that was definitely something that I had to figure out along the way. I forgot that this was possible in Elementor. So sometimes even people that are super experienced forget all the things that Elementor can do. One thing to note is that this is using Elementor Pro. You could probably achieve this with the free version of Elementor, but it's definitely going to be easier if you have the Pro version because there are more widgets available and you can add custom CSS directly to containers and widgets versus having to edit your theme files. So highly recommend just using Elementor Pro for this. I'm also using Flex Containers. This is a new thing that is in Elementor. It's still in the experiments tab, so it's not quite ready for full release to the public, but I wanted to use this because this is the way Elementor is going and it does make things a lot easier. I know it is a learning curve. I know a lot of people are kind of mad about the change, but This is how we're building websites nowadays, so you have to kind of get with the times, honestly. You have to be up to date with the latest technology, and I'm so glad that Elementor added this to their platform because it does make things a lot easier, and you can do a lot more than you could just using the old version where you have sections and columns and rows. I've opened up a brand new page in Elementor, and let's start recreating this. I'm going to start by creating a 2-container structure from here. Now, I'm going to apologize in advance because I'm still not quite used to the terminology in the new Flexbox. It is called containers and not columns anymore, but I've gotten so used to saying columns that I might mess up throughout this video. So instead of columns, these are now called containers. This is something that I'm definitely getting used to still, so I apologize in advance if I do mess up. I do mean container though. I'm going to make this entire container full width, so we have 2 containers going to the edge of the screen. Now I'm going to start adding some widgets to this. I'm going to start by adding a heading widget, and I'm going to change this from an H2 to a span tag, and I'm just going to call this residences 4. I'm going to center that and change some of the styling. I'm going to go to typography and change that to uppercase. And I'm just going to make this a tiny bit bigger. Then I'm going to go back to my widgets and I'm going to drag over another heading, and I will leave this one as an H2, and I'm going to type in sale here. I will center that, and then I do need to adjust the typography for this one as well. For this, I'm going to change the font family to Helvetica. I'm going to make it a lot bigger, and I'm going to change the transform to uppercase. Now this is where I'm going to actually put in my text stroke. So if I go below typography, you see the text stroke option available. I'm going to click that on, and I'm going to give it a text stroke of 1 pixel. The stroke color is fine with it being black, but now I'm just going to go to the text color and change that to transparent. So that's how we get that cool effect. Now I need to make this full height. So what I'm going to do here is click again on this entire container, and I'm going to change the min height to 100 VH. So that's vertical height. And now I need to make sure that this is in the center. So I'm going to click on this container and go to items. And from here, you can align your content. So I'm going to justify my content to the center, and now it's centered. I can copy and paste this the same as before in Elementor. That function didn't go away. So I'm going to copy and paste this and this into this container over here, and just change out the text. I went ahead and copied this information over into this container, changed it to say lease instead of sale, so things are looking pretty good so far. Now I have to start changing backgrounds. I'm going to click on this container, and then I'm going to go to my style tab and background. Now there is a normal and a hover state for background, so we're definitely going to take advantage of that. Under background type for normal, we'll choose the classic color, and then we will change the color to kind of a light yellow. So this kind of cream color. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. I'm going to copy that because we want to do this again over on the right-hand side. Now this is where Navigator does come in handy. I'm going to click the Navigator, click that container because it just makes things a little bit easier. I couldn't actually click that because this control was over top of it when I was just hovering. So definitely use Navigator when you need to. Going to again choose the normal and color. I'm going to paste that in, and now we have two cream colored backgrounds on our normal state. So we have to change it on hover now to include the image. So I'm going to click hover, and then I'm going to do background type again, but this time we're going to upload an image. So I'm going to select an image here, and if I hover over this, you can see that it shows up on hover. So pretty cool. Let me just get rid of the navigator temporarily. I'm going to just make sure that my position is center, and my repeat is no repeat, and my size is cover. So now we are getting somewhere. And what's cool about this, when you have the position at center, it does kind of a cool slide-in effect. You don't have to do this, but I think it kind of adds something, so I'm going to keep it. I'm also going to add a bit of a background overlay on this because the text is a little hard to read when it's just the straight image, so I'm just going to darken this a bit. So I'm going to go to background overlay, and we need to make sure we select hover again, and we're going to add a overlay color of black. I don't think it needs to be 50%. I'll try to do like 25. See how that looks. That looks pretty good. We have to remember that this is going to be white, so I think we're good to go on that. Now I need to do it on this side, so I'm going to go over here and do the same thing. Okay, so now we have our hover working. You can see that it kind of slides in, looking pretty good. Now we have to make this entire container a link and change the color so that when you roll over it, this changes from black to white, and then this fills in with white. In order to make everything a link, I have to go back to my container, and I need to go to layout and change the HTML tag to say, instead of default, A. That will make the entire container clickable, which is a really handy feature. I love that they have this in Elementor because there are times when you want your entire container to click to somewhere else, and this is one of those times. So I'm just going to put in a pound sign so we can make that a link. One thing to note is that when you roll over it in the editor, the cursor doesn't change, so you might not think it's working, but it actually is working. If you preview this, you will see that it works. So you can see that as I hover over this, it does change to a cursor, so that entire section is now a link. One thing that I just noticed by previewing this is that this is showing up as pink. Sometimes this happens because it takes styles from your theme, and you just need to go in and adjust things to make sure that it's overriding those theme styles. So let me go back to this and just click on here and change the text color to black, and that should fix the problem. If I preview this again, yes, you can see that it is now black on both sides. If you find yourself running into that problem, it could just be that you need to update your text color to override those theme styles. I do need to add a border in between each column, so I'm going to do that now. I'm going to click on this container and go to, I believe it's under advanced. Oh, it's under style. I'm going to add a border, going to make that border solid, and I'm going to unlink this and just do the border on the right hand side of 1 pixel, and we will make that color black. If I preview this again, you can see that there's now a border, so things are starting to look pretty good. We have to do a couple more things to get this to work right. I need to make sure that the lease container is also clickable, so I'm going to do the same thing that I did on the left container and change the HTML tag to an A tag. Now that I've changed the right-hand side to be an entirely clickable container, I do need to add some CSS code in order to change the color of the text. In order to do that, I need to add a class to both the left container and the right container. So I'm going to do that now. I'm going to click on the left container, go to my Advanced tab, and under CSS classes, I'm going to call this half. You can call this whatever you want. You just have to make sure that your corresponding CSS matches with the class that you called the container. I'm going to do the same thing to the right-hand side. I'm going to just open up my navigator so I can easily access this container. Then again, go to my Advanced tab and type in half here. Now that I've added my classes to the left and right container, I have to add some custom CSS in order to get the colors of the text to change. Whenever possible, I try to not use custom CSS. I try to do everything in Elementor because I do like to make my websites very easy to edit. And if I were to hand off this website to a client, I want to make sure that they would be able to edit things when they need to. When you're dealing with custom CSS, sometimes it gets pretty complicated, but in this case, it's just really a couple lines of code and it wouldn't affect how things are being edited. They would still be able to edit the text, edit this background color if they wanted to. So I'm not super worried about it, but I do like to, whenever possible, do everything within the editor. In this case, to get this to work, I do need to add some custom CSS, and it is nice to have this in Elementor Pro. So I try not to use it, but when I do have to, I do like to have that available. We actually need to add the CSS to the main container. So the blue box is what we need to edit. And that is because we're using the same class for both the left and the right-hand side, so we don't need to add it to each container individually. We can just add it in one place because that's how classes work. You can reuse them over and over. I actually made this mistake at first and I added it to both the left and right, realized what I did and said, hey, this could be done in a better way. So I'm going to show you the right way to do it, and I'm going to click on container, go to Advanced, and then go down to Custom CSS and put my code in here. If we hover over our two containers, you can see it's doing what we want it to do. It's changing the text from black to white. And instead of having the text stroke, we have a solid white color. So this is exactly what we want it to do. Let me just explain what's happening here. So this custom CSS, which I will put in the description down below so you can just copy and paste it if you are attempting to try this on your own site. What this is doing is it is saying to change the color of the H2, which is what says sale and lease, and the color of the span. So that is what says residence for on both sides. It's saying to change the color and then to change the WebKit text stroke to 0. So basically remove the stroke on hover. So it's just a few lines of code to get this to work correctly, which is why I'm not too worried about editing in the future. If I did hand this off to a client, they could pretty easily still edit the page, no problem. They wouldn't have to mess with this code at all. Now if I preview this, we can see that it's working pretty well. We have the hover state going, everything is linked up. No matter where I click in this box, you can see that it is a link, the cursor changes. So it's working really well. And I do like the kind of slide in effect that we have going on by changing the position of the background on hover. That's what affects this, and I think it looks pretty cool. So I think we successfully recreated this in Elementor. Before we hit publish on this project, we need to check to make sure things look good on tablet and mobile. So I'm going to hit my responsive mode settings. On tablet, we do need a little bit of work. I'm going to make these with 100%. So I'm just going to click on this container, change both of these so that they're 100% width. One thing to note with the flex containers is that you have to adjust the container that things are in sometimes in order for the responsive settings to work. So I put these both at 100%. Obviously, they're not going the full width of the page, and that's because I have to make an adjustment to this container. Here's where I need to change. So I need to change this to the down arrow, and that will make it go 100% width. And now I can just change the minimum height on tablet to 100 VH, and it will give me the effect that I'm looking for. I just wanted to make a note of that because if you are beginning to work with the new Flexbox containers and you're wondering why things aren't working the way that they worked in the previous version of Elementor, that could be the reason why. So there are a few extra buttons to click in some areas, but overall, this is a much cleaner code and you can really do so much more with the Flex container, so I really like it. Now I'm going to check my mobile settings. We are 100% width on both of these containers, but we definitely need to adjust this text size because that's a little bit big. So let's just go to the Style tab, update the typography on this H2. It doesn't need to be 120 pixels. Maybe we'll do 65. That looks a lot better. It's fitting nicely within the screen. So I'm just going to go up here, update this one as well. And I think we are good to go. So yeah, I think that looks pretty good on mobile, on tablet, we're looking nice. And of course on desktop as well, we're looking pretty good. One more thing to note, if you're wondering why these are sliding from right to left in the editor, but when I go to preview it, it's sliding up, it's just due to screen size. If I click this off, it now slides up. It's just due to the screen size and how much real estate you have on the screen. So you can play around with those settings if you want, but I kind of like this effect. I think it's fun. That's it for today's tutorial. Did we recreate it in Elementor? I think we did. Even though it took me a little bit longer than I originally thought it would to recreate this, I got there in the end, and I hope that you learned something from it. I definitely can see myself using something similar to this on a project in the future, so maybe it's something that you can use too. If you like videos like this, we have a whole playlist called Can I Recreate It, where you can view all the different things that I've recreated in Elementor. And be sure to subscribe to the channel because we make tutorial videos like this every week and we'd love to have you join our community. Thank you for watching and I'll see you next time.